Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a really fascinating turn, I think.
Mm-hmm.
We're focusing our linguistic microscope on a source that seems, well, surprisingly specific.
It does on the surface.
It's all about refining communication skills,
Mm.
drawing from a lesson on English conversation,
Mm.
describing favorite hotels.
Right.
And, my first thought was, okay, talking about a hotel, that's pretty basic.
Just a list of amenities, maybe.
Exactly. A list of adjectives and nouns. But the material suggests something much more strategic is going on.
It does.
So our mission today isn't just to learn the word for minibar. We're diving into the structure, the strategy behind describing a really personal sensory memory.
That feeling you get.
Yes, that unique feeling of your absolute favorite hotel and doing it persuasively in a language that's not your first.
And this is such a crucial dive for you, the learner. We talk a lot about fluency, but it's not just about grammar.
It's more than that.
It's about having the tools to talk about nuance, about preference. I mean, if you can explain why something is your favorite, you've really crossed a threshold.
That's a great point.
The goal here is to see why mastering this one niche, talking about personal travel experiences, is, well, it's a huge accelerator for real fluency.
Because it pushes you.
It pushes you right past that basic transactional language and into something much more relational.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Why favorite hotels?
Yeah, why so specific?
Right. Why not favorite book or something? There's this subtle idea here that just general travel talk isn't enough to show you've mastered the language.
It's a starting point, but not the destination.
For sure. If I can say, I went to Italy, the hotel was clean, I've communicated. But the second I have to explain why it was my favorite,
The linguistic demands they skyrocket.
they really do.
Absolutely. And the challenge of describing a hotel is so unique because it demands this seamless blend of different linguistic styles.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Well, you have to provide the facts, right? The factual reporting.
The location, the amenities, the rooftop bar.
Exactly, the coordinates. But at the very same time, you have to weave in subjective emotional language, sensory language.
How the atmosphere actually felt.
Yes. Was the lighting warm? Was the service tailored or just robotic? What was that specific scent in the lobby?
I wonder, though, for a learner who's just starting out, isn't saying it was good enough.
That's a great question.
Why do we need to push them into these, higher level descriptions?
It really gets to the heart of why we learn a language. If your goal is just survival,
Right.
ordering food, asking for directions,
Mm.
then yes, good is fine.
But that's not the real goal for most people.
Not for connection, no. When we share our favorites, we're really sharing a piece of our identity, our taste, our judgment.
So if you just say your favorite hotel was good,
Mm-hmm.
you're not really conveying the impact it had.
Exactly. The listener misses the whole richness of the experience.
So the challenge is bridging that gap between the cold facts. The hotel is in Lisbon, and the warm experience, it felt like stepping into a private art gallery.
That is it, precisely. And that's the aha moment for you, the listener. Real fluency means moving beyond those all-purpose adjectives like nice or big.
You have to get more specific.
You have to start using vocabulary that's specific to hospitality to aesthetics to design. You stop saying the pool was nice.
You start saying
something that evokes a feeling, like the saltwater plunge pool felt like a private oasis carved right into the cliffside.
wow, yeah, that's a completely different level of detail.
It's a targeted injection of language for that niche. It turns a statement into an invitation.
And that gets back to your point about transactional versus relational language.
It's the key.
Transactional language gets you a room key. Relational language gets you a connection with the person you're talking to. You're inviting them into your memory.
And that leads us right into the structural side of things, which the source title hints at with conversation practice.
Right. That phrase is doing a lot of work there.
It is. It's signaling that this isn't about vocabulary lists. It's about organizational structure.
So when someone asks about your favorite hotel, your mind just flashes with all these different images, right?
Dozen beautiful, disconnected fragments.
Yeah, the amazing pillows, the free wine they left, the view. A basic speaker just lists them off. Randomly.
Haltingly, probably.
For sure. So the conversation practice part is about rehearsing how to build the story.
How to start it, how to elaborate, how to transition smoothly.
And, crucially, how to wrap it up with a strong conclusion about why it's your favorite.
Think of it like building the frame of a house. It's narrative scaffolding.
I like that analogy.
If you can master organizing a description of something this complex, a multisensory hotel experience, you've built a template, a sturdy frame you can use for any complex personal story.
So you're saying a fluent speaker organizes it on purpose?
Absolutely. They might start with what I'd call an exterior hook, something like, the first thing that strikes you is the lobby. It's just this explosion of light.
Okay, so you draw the listener in.
Then you move to a core feature. But the true genius is the room, specifically the enormous soaking tub overlooking the rainforest.
And
Then you layer in the human element. But what really made it my favorite wasn't the marble, it was the concierge, Sarah, who remembered my coffee order every single morning.
that organizational logic.
Yeah,
That's the pragmatic takeaway here.
it is.
It teaches the learner about pacing, about using transition words to create flow. You're not just giving bullet points.
You're giving a guided tour.
And if you can guide someone through a luxury hotel description, you've built the confidence to talk about any topic that requires detailed observation.
If we pull back to the bigger picture, rehearsing this kind of description is the fastest way to build confidence for social situations.
Because travel is such a common topic.
It's one of the first things people ask about at a dinner party, a networking event. And if you've already prepared the framework to talk eloquently about one travel story,
Your favorite hotel.
you're suddenly armed to discuss any travel observation with so much more ease. You've already internalized the template for a personal narrative. It's a transferable skill.
It gives you momentum.
Yes.
It stops feeling like you're being tested and it starts feeling like you're just sharing a good story. Which brings us to what might be the single most important word in that source title. Favorite. We're now in section 3, and it's all about defining the linguistic demands that one little word places on a conversation.
It's a heavy word, linguistically.
It really is. When you use favorite, it's not enough to say, I liked it a lot.
No, that word mandates more.
It mandates comparative language. Why is this hotel better than all the others? And it demands justification, the specific reasons why it gets the gold medal.
And what's so fascinating here is the linguistic complexity that this demand creates for the learner.
Oh, so
The language you need to explain the why of a favorite. It often forces you out of simple tenses, like the past simple, and into much higher level grammar.
can you give us an example of that?
Sure. Let's say you're describing a regular hotel. You might say, the service was friendly and the food was fresh. Simple past tense.
Okay, straightforward.
But to justify it as a favorite, you might have to say something that uses, say, the past perfect. For instance, I had stayed in many boutique hotels before, but this one was the first to anticipate my needs.
Ah, I see. That past perfect had stayed shows a sequence. It emphasizes the impact relative to everything that came before.
Exactly. That is a huge jump in complexity.
It really is. You're suddenly dealing with subordination with more complex sentence structures.
Or consider using the conditional. A simple statement is, the lobby was beautiful.
Fine. Descriptive.
But a favorite justification might be, if I hadn't walked through that lobby every morning, I wouldn't have truly understood the value of tranquility.
You're setting up hypotheticals now, connecting them to your actual experience.
And basic transactional talk just. It rarely requires that kind of deep structural maneuvering. Explaining why forces you to engage with these advanced skills. That's the mastery the source is trying to teach.
It's the difference between declaring a fact and defending a feeling.
Well said. You're moving from just being descriptive to being argumentative, in the best sense of that word.
You're making a case.
You're making a case. Think about saying, the hotel was luxurious, that's just an opinion.
Right.
Versus saying, though many places I've stayed were luxurious, what elevated this one was the personalized attention, which transformed my stay from standard comfort into a custom event.
You used a subordinating clause there, though many places, to add that layer of comparison and depth.
You're adding texture. So to summarize the strategy for you, the listener, you have to practice articulating sensory details. Those details are the evidence for your preference.
So don't just say, the bathroom was nice.
Yeah.
Instead, practice saying something like, the enormous standalone tub was filled from a copper spout mounted high on the wall, and the bath salts smelled of eucalyptus.
You're giving sensory evidence.
You practice describing the weight of the duvet, the quality of the morning light, the texture of the floor.
Those details are the emotional currency of conversation. They're what make your story memorable, and they reinforce why you call it a favorite.
You know, I remember a travel moment where I tried to do that. I said something like, the whole room was draped in this golden light, like something out of a Vermeer painting.
Yes, that specificity is what makes the listener pause and actually visualize what you're describing. You're training yourself to be precise with your enthusiasm.
So a practical tip then.
A very practical tip. Go through your favorite hotel experience in your mind. List 2 things about the aesthetics, the design, the view, 2 things about the service, and 2 things about the general atmosphere, the mood, the sounds.
6 specific points.
If you can articulate those 6 nuanced points, you've completely mastered this conversation.
So I think we've really accomplished our mission for this deep dive. We've looked at the structure, the linguistic demands of describing a favorite hotel.
A topic that seems narrow on the surface?
Exactly, but it actually requires this broad mastery of narrative, of detail, emotion, and really sophisticated organization.
And the takeaway is clear. True mastery in conversation practice lies in that preparation. Preparing to talk about personal experiences with real nuance and enthusiasm.
If you can speak passionately about a place you love,
You're armed with the framework to speak skillfully about any personal story.
so a final thought to leave with our listener.
This really raises an important question for you to think about. What detailed language specific to design, to service, to atmosphere are you missing right now? What words would turn your description of a merely nice hotel into a truly captivating narrative of your favorite one?
Find those precise, colorful words.
Find those words that elevate your story. That is exactly where your next journey of exploration should begin.